Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome back here to Ad Gefrin in Northumberland, not far from Gefering and Wooler up here in Northumberland. Now in today's episode we're going to talk about a conundrum that really caused a lot of bother for the archaeologist Brian Hope Taylor, and this is Ad Gefrin British? And this is Ad Gefrin British and then becomes Anglo-Saxon? Is it Anglo-British, so they've mixed together to become a single people? Or is it pure Anglo-Saxon? And this caused a lot of bother for archaeologists on the site and also for archaeologists assessing Brian Hope Taylor's work in the years since. Because one of the things that Brian Hope Taylor really hoped for when he was digging here was to find a continuation between Gefering Bell here, the great British stronghold and largest hill fort in Northumberland, which dates from the late Bronze Age into the Iron Age and then seems to be abandoned around the 1st century BC when many hill forts become abandoned, and down here on the lowlands where we have the royal palace of the Kings of Northumbria. Obviously when he was doing this he actually excavated down here and then he sought permission to go up onto the hillside and excavate up at the top of Gefering Bell, because he was looking to try and see how maybe in the late Roman period there had been a continuation where people had been living up there and then they'd moved down into the area down here to form the palace, and he thought that could be found with the great enclosure just over here. Now the interesting thing about this is when you look through this period, obviously the great hill fort is abandoned, its walls collapse, but we do have evidence of it being occupied in the 2nd, possibly to the 4th centuries, because they've discovered a type of Roman pottery called Samian ware, which is generally associated as sort of a fancy type of pottery. It's imported from France. And then alongside that as well, they also found some late Roman coins. And when they found those late Roman coins, that then suggests there are people actually either living up there or using that site in the late Roman period. Actually nearby there's a hill called West Hill, and that's actually got a fort that does also seem to suggest a continuation as well, because the hill fort goes from being a hill fort used throughout the British Iron Age into the Roman period, into the late Roman period, and even seems to have an annex that is designed to look a little bit like a Roman villa complex, though it's all built with round houses rather than the more rectangular structures. So again, it almost seems on West Hill like there's the Britons in this area, what they've done is they've seen villas, or they've seen the concept or heard the concept of villas, and they're sort of copying them up here. And so that would maybe be where, if let's say Gefering Bell has been abandoned or has been seen as no longer possible to maintain, they've possibly moved over to West Hill, and this tribal aristocracy are living up there in a pseudo-Roman villa right up on the hillside. But that hasn't been excavated yet, so when that does get excavated, that'll be really fascinating to understand if there was a continuation of that period. But when you've got all of this going on, as I said, Brian Hope Taylor was desperately trying to find this continuation and seeing, you know, could the buildings here in early stages be considered British buildings? Could they be considered this continuation of British life up here after the Roman period in late antiquity, before the Anglo-Saxons arrived with the semi-mythological Ida? And could there's some sort of crossover between these two different periods? Now the problem is that more and more the archaeologists have assessed these, and all the settlements throughout the Millfield Valley, around here on the coast, all of those places, they actually seem much more to fit in with the Anglo-Saxon, more Germanic style of building rather than the British style. And you don't necessarily see these round houses and stuff like that. Interestingly enough, recently at Bamburgh Castle there's been an excavation, and they discovered an absolutely massive roundhouse there, which has been interpreted as possibly even being like an industrial building. If there was like a royal palace at Bamburgh during late antiquity, or even in, we definitely know it's occupied during the pre-Roman period and onwards from there, then the aristocracy would have probably been where the castle is today. But they found this massive roundhouse, which probably was an industrial or a living space for people who were living in amongst a palace that was existing at Bamburgh during the Roman period and into the late Roman period as well. So quite frustratingly, we actually see more of a continuation of Britain into Anglo-Saxon at Bamburgh than we even do here. And so again, that would have probably frustrated Brian Hope Taylor a great deal more, because ironically, when the archaeologists were doing that, they were working off his digs at Bamburgh. So his digs at Bamburgh go down a certain level, and yet had he gone down another 6 or so inches, he would have discovered this roundhouse, and he would have then had a sort of evidence of a continuation from British into Anglo-Saxon at Bamburgh Castle. But here at Ad Gefrin, nothing yet has been discovered like that. Nothing yet suggests that there is a continuation between the two sites. It could be that the site here was chosen maybe because of the knowledge of the significance of the Evering Bell just up here, but also because of the fact that the land was a good location and there's a crossing point nearby over the River Glen. So if there's a crossing point, what they've discovered is that 77% of the Anglo-Saxon settlements up here in Northumberland in the 5th to the 7th centuries actually are nearby or between 4 to 12 meters above water crossings or nearby to water floodplains. And so when they're nearby to those water floodplains, that says a control of the movement of people. And so if we understand these as estates, where lords have been given estates and they're supposed to control the landscape here and then support the king when he comes through, with supporting him and his retinue for up to a month with food and drink and accommodation, then suddenly you understand the landscape a bit better, because these pathways around here are actually almost like motorways taking you through. You're crossing over the river at certain easy cross points. You're coming to these places where you can stay overnight and then continue your journey throughout your whole kingdom. And so these palaces like here at Ad Gefrin are situated here, maybe not because there's a continuous continuation, but because geographically it's so well situated that humans are gravitating towards it. Because so far, even though the digs are continuing, there's no suggestion of a British settlement down here in the valley floor or anything before then, until you go right the way back to the early Bronze Age, where we have henges throughout the whole of the valley. There's 10 different henges. So for the early Bronze Age people, this was a location of great significance and importance to them. So again, maybe because of the fact that the Bronze Age settlements are all the way through here, that suggests that this valley has been seen as an important location for people, because the crossing points, the access to fertile land, the good conditions, and all of those other things combined together. And that means that it's actually more of a fact that the landscape is so good that you actually find the Anglo-Saxon palace in this location below the great hill fort of the past, rather than it being a case of a continuation of numerous populations on top of each other. Anyway, I'd love to know what you guys think, and if you think that I'm barking up the wrong tree, or if I've got it right, we're just saying it's the landscape that's the reason why the palace is here, rather than a continuation of different populations. Though I'm really excited to see how the digs at Bamburgh, if they find more and more evidence of a continuation between British into Anglo-Saxon period in the future. If you have enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe, put a comment below, and alongside that as well, please share the video with your friends, and if you would like to support me, please do support me on Patreon. As always, I look forward to sharing more of the history with you in the near future, and I hope you are safe and well. Until next time though, stay safe and well until then.